Yeah, we're doing it.
Welcome, everybody. We're excited to have each and every one of you here today. We've got a great session for you today, led by Brother Stephen Miller. We're going to get him started in just a moment. Before we do, Jeremy Rands is going to welcome everyone and share a few thoughts, and then go to time of prayer.
Hey guys, good to see you today. Glad that you're on, and we're praying that this is going to be very helpful to you. I see. Who did I see there? Thomas. Thomas just moved to Florida, and so I thought that'd be a great opportunity to hear how the Lord's moving in his life real quick, and then ask you to pray and open our roundtable up here today.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'm on cell phone and not internet yet. Working on trying to get that all set up. We left our church in Iowa on Sunday, drove Sunday afternoon and evening all day yesterday, unpacked the truck last night, and woke up in mad chaos this morning. So see what happens. Thank you all for praying for us. And let's get started on our roundtable day. I have a word of Heavenly Father. We just thank you for this time that we could spend together. God, I thank you for all these men and women who are represented here in the network. I thank you for their personal love and support that they've given to me and my family during this time of transition. And I pray that you'd meet the needs of every person who is here. Be with Stephen as he shares with us today and give us what we need. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, so we have just a few announcements today. As you all know, this is an open house, so we have some guests with us here today. So as you're looking around, if you're in gallery view, you'll be able to see everyone. If you're in speaker view, you'll only be able to see me or whoever's speaking at the time. But look around gallery view or look through the chat of the participants and see who's here, and say hi if you see a new name, or if speaking of your names, if like I have a Dan here, I don't know which Dan that is. If you would change your name to your real name, so we can say hi to who you are, and then we know who you are, and then comment in the chat section your real name, what church you're associated with, and city, state. That would help us to know who you are and who we're saying hi to and welcoming to the open house this month. All month is open house, so we're just welcoming whoever wants to jump in, whether they're familiar with the network, maybe on Facebook, or this is kind of their first introduction total. We're super stoked to have you guys. And hopefully you guys are inviting some friends too, just for fun, so they can take advantage of this opportunity. So we have Idea Night 2 weeks from today. I can't believe it. I mean, it's flying by, and it's going to be here so soon. We've put out some sneak peek videos, so you can kind of catch a glimpse of all 5 sessions. So if you haven't seen that yet, an email went out early this morning, which you all, if you're on our email list, you would have received that. But it is also on social media and all over those if you want to see kind of a sneak peek of those sessions. And if maybe one of those sessions is one that your host did not select, you can kind of catch a glimpse of what it would have been and what you can look forward to when those do become available. And for the charter members, there is a new challenge this month that you would have seen on your Friday email. That goes out every Friday for the official charter members who are already involved in the membership. And that challenge is just to invite 2 non-charter members to come to the roundtable. You have to invite them, and they actually have to come for you to qualify. So just two, you have 4 weeks to get 2 guys here, or ministry leaders in general here. You know, they don't have to become a member or anything, just invite them and have them come with you, or on their own. So that's the challenge for this month. And the prize is a $100 Visa gift card. So, for $150 gift card, $50 for each of you, for you and your 2 guests. So invite those friends, and you can enter into that challenge. That is all the announcements we have for today. Pastor Josh, you're up.
Today we've got Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, I told him a moment ago how thankful I am that he was able to join us for a few reasons. First and foremost, it really has to do with the fact that Stephen really helped establish the Idea Network so many years ago, and we decided just to have a day together. And Stephen came back from an event at Ironwood, I think, and it was for youth pastors where they sat around round tables and they shared ideas. And Stephen came back and said, "Man, that was really, really a lot of fun." This is back when Stephen was our youth pastor here. He said, "Man, wouldn't it be cool if we had some pastors sit around at a table and we could share ideas like youth pastors? You know, we could do the same thing." I said, "That's a brilliant idea. Let's pretend you never said it and I created that idea." And he said, "Sure, all right, sure." And we invited some friends together and had a great time. So for me, full circle to Stephen's share, but it's not simply because he was originally part of Idea Network and helped create Idea Day. But it really has to do with the fact that this month, we want to talk about really innovation when it comes to our ministries and how we can constantly be in a state of innovation where we're innovating methodological ideas, though the message never changes. How is that possible? And it really begins with bravery. Stephen is one of the most brave men I know, and bravery is an essential element to ministry, especially in this 21st century. And I believe it will be more so in the years to come. So without any further ado, Stephen Miller, we're glad you're here. Would you join us? Oh, there we go. Even Cox there is celebrating as he comes. Stephen, why don't you talk to us about bravery in ministry?
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. And thank you guys for being here today. And honestly, as we jump into these thoughts, a couple of things I want to say off the bat is, number one, is obviously anytime you share thoughts, you've got to contextualize it for your particular place in ministry, and you have to make it work for where you are. And so understanding that I don't know where you are, these are just, number one, these are original thoughts from me, and they're somewhat still in development, these thoughts. And I think this will end up being maybe a future blog post on the Idea Network where I'll write about this more. So this is kind of like undeveloped thoughts that I'm drawing from my experience. I've been a pastor 1 year, and I just celebrated 1 year. And to give you full context of my journey, so when I took over the church a year ago, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm just giving you the context. It was a suit-wearing, hymn-singing, KJV only, hardcore Baptist church. And in 1 year, we've transitioned it we use the ESV. We painted our wall black. I wear a t-shirt. We have a band-driven service. Now, those are methods, but I wanted to give you the context that we've taken a lot of steps along the way that really require somewhat bravery, maybe borderline stupidity at sometimes, but we've not hesitated to move forward. And we've seen some great results from that. We've had people leave because of that, but I'm very thankful. A year later, I'm very thankful for where the church is at. And so I'm drawing off of kind of my own personal experience with what we did. And so this is kind of like, if I had to put into words what we did in the last year, this would be it. So we'll talk about, I'll call it the essential quality of bravery. So the question, first of all, is when do we need it? When do we need to be brave? And I'll give you a thought here. It takes bravery to start or stop something that changes the general direction of your church. It takes bravery to start or stop something that changes the general direction of your church. So I'll give you an example. It takes bravery to start reaching the community. It takes bravery to stop being closed-minded to new methods. It takes bravery to start making your facilities more modern. It takes bravery to stop making excuses why something can't be done. And so anytime that you want to start or stop something that affects the general direction of your church, it's going to require bravery. That's where it's required, right there. Everything else after that is just a result of making that brave choice. So I'm going to decide to start or stop doing something that will overall change the general direction of our church. It takes bravery right there. Now, let me say this. There is a difference between the general direction and a specific action. Okay, let me explain what I mean by that. Is that a lot of times as church leaders, we think, okay, I need to make the brave decision to add drums to my platform, or I need to make the brave decision to remove my tie on Sunday morning. To me, you're making a brave decision about a specific action, not a general direction. And what happens is that sometimes we make decisions about the specific action, and then the church becomes confused because the general direction of the church is different than the specific action that you just took. So then now they say, Pastor, I thought we were a Baptist church. Pastor, I thought we were this type of church. Pastor, I thought. So to me, a lot of times we get stuck in, should I make this brave decision about a specific action? When if you make the decision to change the general direction, then naturally what will happen is those changes will fall into place. So when we made a decision at Heritage to be a more relevant church and to reach our community, that naturally brought about some specific actions that were going to happen. And now the church is not so hung up on the thing we did, but they're talking about the direction we went. So now they're not saying, do we have drums? Do not have drums. They understand that the changes we are making are directly connected to the direction that we're going. Okay, so understand that's kind of a broad concept. So let me say this: making a change is not setting a direction. Change is not a direction, but I would say that setting a direction will bring about change. So the bravest thing that you can do as a leader is set a clear general direction for where your church is going. Clearly say, this is the kind of church we're going to be. This is what we're focused on. These are the priorities. It takes a lot of bravery to do that, especially if you've been at your ministry for a number of years already, because you've been involved in a certain direction. And so now you're going to change that direction. I will say that it takes a lot of bravery. I don't know if I can identify with that because I came into my ministry setting the direction from day one. Okay, some of you church planners would understand that, right? That you were able to set the general direction right away. If you've been here for a number of years, that could be a little more difficult. That's why it takes bravery in that moment. Now, what happens? So why don't we do that? Because a lot of times we think, okay, I want to change the general direction, but I don't. And so we have to address a couple of myths. Myth number one is this: the reason why sometimes we don't change the general direction and we're not willing to make that brave decision is because of myth number one is, the myth is, when God tells me, I'll do it. And I would say that's a myth, right? Why is it a myth? Okay. Because a lot of times we say, okay, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to be aggressive. I'm willing to reach out to the community, but I'm waiting for God to tell me to do that. And when God clearly tells me to do that, then I am more than willing to do that. And I would say this is a very bold statement, but we have to stop using God as an excuse why we won't do something. We have to stop using God as an excuse why we won't do something. And I'll tell you why. Because God doesn't tell people what they should do about a specific action. At least I've never found that out. I've never met a pastor who said, one day I was walking in a field and God just clearly told me, next Sunday, you need to have drums. I've never had a pastor share that conversation with me, right? And so we think, okay, when God tells me to make this specific action, I'll do it. But God doesn't necessarily talk to us about specific actions, but he does give clarity in his word about general directions. You say, well, when God tells me to do it, I'll do it. Can I say this very lovingly? God has already told you to do it. He said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Be aggressive, be bold. The Bible says, upon this rock, I will build my church, not maintain my church, not keep my church members happy, but I will build my church. And so God has already given us a bold declaration that as leaders, we need to not wait for God to tell us what to do. He's already told us. Now we need to define what that looks like in our context. So the question I would have is this: will God tell you when to add an instrument? Probably not. Will God tell you when to have that outreach event? Probably not. Will God tell you when you need to add that ministry? Probably not. And so we have to let go of the myth that, okay, I will start being aggressive. I'll start reaching my community when God clearly tells me. My friend, God has already told you. He's already said, reach the world, reach in, and you have the power to do that. And so we have to not believe the myth that, okay, when God clearly tells me, because honestly, sometimes the code for God will tell me is when the decision is easy. So when the decision is easy, that's when I'll do it. And we use God, and we use God as a cop-out. We say, well, when God tells me, what we're really saying is, when I can guarantee that the least amount of people will leave the church, that's when I'll make the change. When I can guarantee that I'll get the least amount of pushback, that's when I'll make the change. Or I'll change the direction, whatever it is in your context. And we cannot believe that myth. The other myth that sometimes we believe that keeps us from taking a brave step is the myth of it's just not the right time. We believe that God wants us to do it, but we say, it's just not the right time. Okay, here's the question I would ask you. What needs to happen for it to be the right time? Because we can talk about how it's always not the right time. And I will say this, as leaders, it will never be the right time. It'll never be the right time to make that change. That's why it's a bold, brave direction, because bravery says, I'm going to make this decision knowing that it may not be exactly all in place, but I'm going to take a step of bravery and faith to make this decision. Okay, so then we understand we need to focus on a general direction change. Then we need to stop believing the myths. When God tells me it's not the right time, for example, I've noticed this a lot. Maybe you've noticed this too. It's interesting how when we talk about it's not the right time, like we're hoping for an easy time. How many of us, myself included, how many of us have said, man, I'll tell you what, I'm so glad that COVID came along because it allowed us to make some changes that we were wanting to make, right? All of us have said that. Can I tell you this? That is not how God wants you to lead the church. God does not want you to wait for a pandemic to make a change. That is not brave, okay? And so to me, I think on one hand, it was really good because we did that too. But on the other hand, I think it showed how sometimes we can be so scared to make change that it literally took a global pandemic for you to get rid of the choir. And what I'm saying is that may come along once in your lifetime, but it's probably not going to come along twice. And so if you're waiting for the easiest, safest moment to make that change, it'll never be made. And so you've got to let go of the myth of it's not the right time. Now, what do you do after that? Okay, so I'm going to change the general direction. I'm going to stop believing the myths. Then here's the steps that you need to take. Just a couple things and I'm done. You need to, before you do something brave, you need to first say something brave. Before you do something brave, you need to first say something brave. And here's what I would say. You need to say something brave to a few people privately. To a few people privately. So what I did was I went to Heritage. We needed to make major changes. We've remodeled our auditorium. I mean, we're talking about major changes. We spent a lot of money remodeling our entire auditorium and made a lot of changes. I did not announce to the church that we were going to do all this without first saying those brave things to a few trusted people privately. So I have a once a month leadership meeting and I met with our guys and I began to say these brave things like, guys, we will be a church that reaches the community. Guys, we will be a church that is relevant in our methods. We will be a church where people are coming in the doors. I've said these brave things privately. And what you'll find is sometimes these guys, when you talk to them, they have no concept of that because they're just going to church. They've never had anybody challenge them on how they can be an engaging church. And so now you've got to walk through some of your trusted men, some of your trusted leaders and get them on board. So the next step is to say that brave thing privately to a few trusted men and have some meetings, get their feedback, get their thoughts, listen to what they have to say and then adjust and then, take their advice and then move forward. So you say something brave to a few privately, and then you say something brave to the rest publicly, okay? And so one of the things that we have done here at Heritage is if you come on a Sunday, you will constantly hear me talk about the type of church we're going to be. We will be a church that reaches the community. We're going to be a church where everyone's welcome. We're constantly talking about that because I need to let the church know this is the direction that we're going. And so it's very important that you as a leader say something brave first before you do something brave. Have we lost people because of the changes and because of the direction? Sure, of course we have, right? But we haven't lost people because we made a change. We lost people because we set a direction. And sometimes you have to lose 5 to gain 500. And there's addition by subtraction. And so I think I would challenge you to say, okay, what is the thing? What is the direction that God is telling us to go? What is the thing that God is clearly telling me to do? And what myths am I believing? Okay. Once you can get over those myths, now it's time to say something brave to a few privately, to the rest publicly, and then make the decision. And then step forward and be bold about the direction that God has for you. Again, this is a broad generalization for everyone in here. I don't know where you're at in your ministry, but what I would say is this, is that 2 things, and I'll close it out. A.W. Tozer said this. A.W. Tozer said that a scared world needs a fearless church. A scared world needs a fearless church. And as church leaders, we need to be fearless. Why? Because there will always be more people to reach than there are to lose. There will always be more people to reach than there are to lose. And with that in mind, as a church leader, I'm going to be brave and trust God for the results. So appreciate the time today.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Before we break up into groups, I just wanted to share the questions that we're going to be discussing inside of our smaller roundtables. If you're new, by the way, what we do is we come together, we have a talk, and then we break up into smaller groups. Don't worry, it happens automatically. All you have to do is press confirm when Kylie goes to break you up into a smaller Zoom roundtable. And that's going to be starting in a moment. Now, what questions will we be discussing in these smaller groups? Number 1, what is the one thing you've changed due to COVID? It's a great point. They're all of us that are like, oh man, this is great. Pull the trigger. I'm done with this, or I'm going to start this ministry. What's the one that you did change due to COVID? Number 2, what is the one thing you need to change now, but you're a little afraid to do it? The one thing you need to change, but you're hoping that the world doesn't go through another pandemic before you pull the trigger on that. What is that one thing? For me, it's to grow an epic beard, because I really need to be more like Dale Curdy. And I don't need God to take us through a pandemic for that to happen. I just need to, I'm going to try. No, that's not true. Number 3, third question, change your direction, not your specific method. Great statement. Do you know your direction? Now, this is where the conversation is going to get extremely authentic and very real. Have you identified your direction? I remember having this conversation with a dear, dear friend of mine who said, he said, the problem in our church is that we keep trying to mimic changes that you or others have made, but we never set a direction to go where you're going. And I'm like, that was a brilliant statement, Steve. It's 100% true. Don't just pick and choose what other churches have done. Do you know where you're going? And if we need to help develop that, bring that up in your roundtable or speak to that concept. Number 4, what bold and brave step do you need to take by January 1st? What bold and brave step can you identify and then speak into a group to say, you know what I really need to do? By January 1st, we need to start this, or we need to end this. What bold and brave? For us, pandemic got rid of Awana for us. I've been wanting to kill Awana for years. And for my friend Denny, who's in this group, the pandemic helped him to start Awana this next year. And he's always wanted to start Awana. So what is it that you might want to start, or what is it that you might need to kill before January 1st? Be bold and brave. Let's have this discussion. Let's go to it. We'll come back together in a few moments after the small roundtables.
Boom, this is me, right, Kylie? What's up, everybody? I've got Steve Miller in this room. That is not nerve-wracking at all. All right. Here's what I want to do. As the moderator, I just want to open it up to discussion and moderate. I want to let you guys talk about what we just heard. One of the things that Steve said that was so good is culturally, this is going to hit everybody a little bit different. And so I want to hear kind of in your context where you're at. And then I wrote down some notes in addition to the questions. So let's just get started with question number one. When you guys want to talk, just go ahead and unmute, go for it. That's why we're here. Question one, what is the one thing you've changed due to COVID?
I'll jump in if nobody else wants to.
Go for it.
So, I mean, context wise, I pastor a church, put in chat. I literally grew up here. We got like 20 people now, post COVID, town of 5,000. It's great. Major change here was a change of even our associations, who we were connected with. And that was big. So, small town, small group that we were used to. My background, I know everybody else's background is independent fundamental Baptist, and there's a small camp we were allowed to associate with there. And even just making some of those changes really, I think, affected our church in good ways. And as Stephen mentioned, we had some leave and going around trashing us now. But that's kind of what COVID did for us, and we really have grown and appreciated a lot.
All right. I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks a lot. What else? What else on number one? One thing you've changed due to COVID?
We switched up our schedule, just our whole weekly schedule. We kind of tossed the whole thing in the trash can, pulled out a clean piece of paper and started over. And we made some really good adjustments that has helped our church.
Nice. John, thanks for sharing. Good for you guys. What else?
We went to 2 morning services, did away with Sunday school, moved our Sunday night service to life groups, and then we also did away with our bus ministry. So we did a lot of changing during that time that was really beneficial to where we were headed as a church.
Good for you. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of ministries that have moved on from bus ministry due to COVID, and that's understandable. So good for you guys. Who else?
I can say, well, we did go to 2 services. The first one is a mandatory mask for those in the church that, just felt like that's what they needed. And then the 11 o'clock service, it's recommended, but it's not enforced. So we've been able to get pretty good mix that way as well. And we're also just more intentional about what we do now just because of COVID.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Those are good thoughts. What else? Somebody else was getting ready to tune in.
Yeah. We changed we took our Sunday school and moved it to Wednesday night. That was probably the biggest thing that helped us. So moving basically what you would do is Sunday school at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. We just moved it to Wednesday nights and called it growth groups. And it just basically doubled our Wednesday night attendance. And then we went to 1 service on Sunday. So those are the 2 biggest changes we made.
Yeah. And I think, like Steve said, not that we should be doing it this way, but it definitely gives an opportunity when COVID happened to kind of make some changes we weren't anticipating before. What else? Anybody else want to weigh in on number one thing you've changed due to COVID?
I wasn't in position. I'm the student director at Valley Baptist Church. My pastor's actually in this same group, but he'll be able to chime in on this. But one thing we did was we actually started having outdoor services. And whereas that was at the time, that was like a requirement. That's kind of what we had to do, to get the space we needed. It's actually now become something that we're planning on continuing to do, even though, not permanently and not every Sunday, but we've got a couple scheduled for the remainder of the year. But it's an awesome opportunity for the families just to it's almost a reminder of what we were going through and how that kind of was our safe haven at the time. And now we're able to look back at that. But so we've got a couple more scheduled, but I know that was a huge thing for our church that we now really enjoy periodically now.
Cool. Right on. Okay. Let's move on to number 2. I'll read the question here. What is one thing that you need to change now, but you're a little afraid to do it? What's one change you know it needs to be made, you know it needs to happen, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. What's one thing that you need to change now, but you're afraid to do it? This is a safe space, so feel free to weigh in. If not, maybe we've already accomplished all this, Steve. Your inspirational talk at the beginning has pushed us all over the edge. We've already implemented the changes since you spoke. Anybody want to weigh in on something you're afraid to do?
I've got one here. Just the decision on, I don't know if it's a change, is we have not had a gym up to this point. We were getting ready to get one going into COVID, and that kind of stalled us. And now, the bravery to make that jump and make that change, we feel like in our context, it would help with outreach and get a little nervous with the economy. Should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? And this has helped.
Good. I appreciate you saying that. Good for you.
I don't know if, necessarily, we're here afraid to make, like we have some changes we're afraid to make, but even just, and I know it's kind of sound contrary to what Stephen was mentioning, choosing the right time, because we're already making at our church a lot of changes. So just having some tactical patience of when to make one change or another. We've been meeting with our deacons, going through Simple Church, which is by Tom Rayner, and that's kind of just setting the whole direction of the church, but trying to weed out what's going to distract. What changes are we going to make that's going to distract from that major emphasis? Is kind of where we're at. So not necessarily fearful, but just trying to find wisdom of when and what.
Okay. Who else? All right. We're going to move on to 3. Statement was change your direction, not a specific method. Question is, do you know your direction? I'm not looking for a simple yes or no here, but a little more specificity to it. Do you know your direction, where you're going, and methods that would go along with that? Anybody want to weigh in on 3?
Since I just spoke, I'll build off what I said. We have adopted a new mission statement for our church, really trying to take and fall back on that mission statement as being, the driving force behind what we're doing, trying to get all the focus on the mission, on what we're, reaching our community and helping people find what our mission statement is, helping people find the way, the truth, and the life, driving people to come to know Jesus, to grow in a relationship with him, and then move forward in action there. That's the directional change, major directional change we've made. I don't hope I answered that question well. I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah, what you said makes sense. What else? Let me read it again. Change your direction, not a specific method. Do you know your direction and kind of how it aligns with what you're trying to accomplish?
One thing that I remember, so I went to the Idea Summit out in Las Vegas, but that was my first experience with this community. And one thing that's really stuck with me from it is you cannot overstate your mission, or you cannot overstate your goals. And so with that, me and Pastor D, Denny, labeled as Denny's new iPhone 7 in here. But me and him, we talk frequently about, why are we doing what we're doing? If we have a youth event that I'm planning, it's not just, hey, give these kids a night off from hearing me talk. It's not, hey, let's give these kids, time where they can just have fun and they don't have to think. It's, no matter what we do, if it's on the bus ride there, or if it's on the bus ride home, or if it's something we pass out at the end of the night, we're always giving them something. So we've established that our goal is to help the people around us as well as ourselves get closer to God, being disciples and making disciples at the same time. So that's one thing that in my position and I'm very new to this, I've only been doing this since June, but I've been able to learn from him and kind of see how when you overstate your goals, or when you attempt to overstate your goals, that's how you get things done. And our goal truly is to reach out to the community around us. So I've been getting involved in public schools, Christian schools, all those things. And it's not so they can see, oh, this is the youth pastor that thinks he's cool over at Valley Baptist Church. This is, hey, this is someone that's letting me know that there's a safe place that I can go if I ever have any questions or anything like that. So outreach and establishing, helping others establish relationships with God has really been our goal, and it's been clearly defined.
Jason, if I say, I think sometimes we know what we want to do, like clearly, like we want to be a church that reaches people, right? That's if you sum up Heritage, that's what we are. We're a church that reaches people. But then you get like these random questions, like from old ladies. Well, they'll say something like, "So, are we going to continue to sing hymns in this church?" Right? Because for them, they don't care how many people you reach, as long as you have their favorite hymn every 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we fall into this trap where we know where we want to go, but at the same time, we try to pacify people in order to get there. And we end up going nowhere. And that's the bravery. That's why setting a direction in the beginning is saying, no, like we're not going to have hymns anymore. Like, no, I'm not going to wear a tie. And because when we say those like defining statements, then we are causing people to decide whether or not they want to be a part of a church like that. And that's where it can be really difficult. And the reason why it's difficult is because nobody's coming in the door. So you try to do everything you can to keep people from going out the door. Like the only time that you get nervous about people leaving is when no one's coming. And so if nobody's coming in the door, then when people are telling you they're going to leave, you begin to step back on that direction. So what I would suggest is you need to have a clear enough direction that engages people in your community, so people are coming in. They're coming. So that when someone says, well, I don't like the direction of the church, you have to say, well, excuse me, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you over the baptism waters, because like we have 3 people baptized last week. What'd you say? Right? You don't like, and I'm not trying to be rude or mean, and maybe I'll get fired eventually and go work for one of you guys. But my thing is that so many times we are so bold and brave inside of our staff meeting rooms, right? And then we're walking down the middle aisle and someone says, now the lights aren't going to be like this, right? And we're like, no, dude, turn the lights out real quick, right? And we pacify people. And I think what I have found in ministry is that the more that we pacify people, the less that we can accomplish the direction that we want to go. And that's why it is brave to set a general direction and say, like, there would be people in our church right now if I would have dressed a certain way. There would be people in our church right now, but that's where we have to go back and say there are more people to reach than there are to lose. Yeah. The only problem with that is that if you're not reaching anybody, like literally if the same people come to your church every single week and there's no new life, then now you are leveraging like the entire church to hopefully reach people. And I think that's where you have to start reaching people. You have to get new people in, engage the community, get them in. That's what the direction produces. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like we didn't paint our back wall black because everyone in our church wanted us to. Matter of fact, probably half the church didn't want us to, right? But the reason why we did it is because the other half could care less because they're new Christians. And so now we're able to leverage the church in a position that is moving forward than standing still. And I think that's a key piece that I would say to you, if nobody's coming into your church, don't take your tie off and throw drums up. And these are all things that I would do, and paint your ceiling black, because no one's going to come to the church, right? You're going to the church. You've got to first start reaching people. And that is the key. The reason why we don't make changes is because we're more afraid of the people that are leaving. Why are we afraid of the people that are leaving? Because no one new is coming. So I would say, make sure that whatever general direction you set, it results in reaching people. Because once you have that confidence, then you know there's always going to be more people to reach than there are to lose. That's been such a reality in my journey this past year here at Heritage.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you elaborating on that. Go ahead.
Just have a quick question on that, because that was just really, really good. Steve, I have a question. Share a story that leads to my question. So you mentioned, walking down an aisle and you're brave with stepping out of that, that classroom or that staff meeting, but then so-and-so stops you. I was attending a small conference in Fontana at Rock Hill Church. And which is, if you know Pastor Chappell, it's his son, Matt, started the church. And this is years ago. I think it's about their 3rd year anniversary. I was standing there in the conference, worshiping Jesus. It was dark inside, the lights were on. And I'm literally like halfway down the middle of this row, and 2 people come walking next to me and stands right next to me. And I look over, and it's Pastor Chappell and his wife. And they look at me and say, and she didn't recognize me, but he did. And he said, hey, I forget her name, but hey, so-and-so, this is Akeem. You can't recognize him now because he looks like, he's got a jean jacket on, and it's not. I started laughing, we shook hands, and he stood next to me with his wife. And then another guy that was on staff there at the church, I think a volunteer, comes by, and Pastor Chappell grabs him. And he says, hey, can we turn on the lights in here? and the volunteer said, no, that's just how we do things around here.
That's right.
Didn't know Pastor Chappell, right? And he had that audacity. Actually, he did know Pastor Chappell because he knew that was Matt's dad. But he had the audacity to say, this is just how we do things around here. And so my question, Steve, is like, as you're making those changes, how have you led the people that are closest to you when it comes to making those changes? Because number one, you can't answer all the questions, but then there's going to be other people that are on staff, that are in proximity, that are representing leadership, that will have to speak into those things as well.
Yeah, 3 things real quick. Number one, as we're making the changes, I'm always remaining approachable. So in my bold direction, I'm constantly saying from the pulpit, come talk to me. I'd love to talk to you. So to me, there's nothing more frustrating than a leader making change and then being unapproachable, right? So people can come and talk to me about that, and they have. That's number one. Always remain approachable, always remain open to conversation, and don't be insecure when someone questions you on a change. Because to me, you have to know why you're making that change before you make the change. That's number one. Number two, what I would say is it's actually infused in our membership process. So we have step 1, step 2, and step 3. We talk about the kind of church we are in our membership process. Literally, I tell people in step 1, these are new people that are coming to our church for maybe 2 weeks. I said, I just want you to know that we are a church that is constantly changing. So it's like, if you're bothered with change, if that's not your thing, like, just so you know, we're always going to be adjusting things methodologically, not biblically, but methodologically. So they know the kindest thing you can do is be completely clear, right? Because I'd rather have someone say no to something they understand than yes to something they're hoping to get. And so I think I just am very clear in that membership process. This is who we are. We're a church that reaches people. We actually have changed our whole membership process. We call it team membership, not church membership, because Heritage is a family and a team. And we want you to be a part of the team. This is what the team does. These are the goals of the team. This is the focus of the team. And so we want to be reaching people. So we do that in our membership process. And then number 3, we state it very clearly from the pulpit. So like even this past Sunday, I made the statement. I said, if you're looking for a church that's all about you, this is not the church for you. Like, I literally said that statement from the pulpit on Sunday. And now that may be stupid, and it may be like, oh, I wouldn't do that. And maybe one day I'll look back and say that was dumb. I literally said the phrase, I said, we are not a church that is going to be focused on what you want. And I literally said, this probably I shouldn't have said this, but I said it, oh well. I said, how many people have to die and go to hell to keep you happy? Now that's very, very, very bold and very, very, very brave, okay? But honestly, I'm just being honest with you. I didn't come to the church because of the people that were there already. It wasn't like, oh, if you stay, then I'll come. God has clearly called me there, and I have to make some bold statements up front to say some things that they understand. We're not trying to be mean, and I said it in love. I said it was very kind. I joke around. If you watch the tape, you'll see it. But we made it very clear And to me, people may agree with it, they may not agree with it, but they cannot deny that we were clear about it. And they let us know that. And so that's where I would say be as clear as you possibly can. And at the same time, be as approachable and open as you possibly can. And I think that will give that balance to where you can kind of handle some of those conversations as they come up as you're making these changes.
Hey, something that I've learned, people are looking for you to know what you're doing, where you're going, and that you're confident. When you're passive in what you're doing, people get nervous because they think you're mimicking somebody else's vision. But when you stand with boldness and you preach with passion, they'll get behind you because they're excited that you know where you're going and they're excited that you know what you believe in.
Yep. I would listen to anything that Tony says. That's the other thing I want to say before this call is out. Whatever Tony says, I would absolutely do it.
That's a good word to end on. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Welcome back, guys. I'm glad you all had a great discussion. We're looking forward to finding out from each of you, specifically what you are able to share. So let's go ahead and go to some of the group leaders. We'll begin there with Jason Shuler. Jason, why don't you share with us what you, some of the highlights of what was shared in your group?
Yeah, we had, Steve was actually in our group. And so we had a couple stories and questions come in specifically for him. But I would say the main highlight was clarity and confidence. And then relationship over ritual is something that was really highlighted in our group. When you have a relationship with people and you're confident in your stand and firm with the direction of where you're going, you can get some buy-in. And we really highlighted that statement that Steve made toward the end of his talk about there's a lot more people to gain than those that you have to lose. And so you just heard some practical illustrations from guys in different contexts of ministry who are doing it, making bold choices, making decisions that are not easy, but are definitely where the direction of their church is going. So we had really great relationship questions and talk about just relationship over ritual is probably the highlight from all the things that we discussed in our chat.
I love it. Larry, why don't you share with us what was said in your group that really stands out?
There it is. Sorry about that. There were a couple of things that were said that really stuck out to me. And one was by Tommy Thompson. He talked about seizing the opportunity to get healthy. It wasn't just about decision making that were just bold moves. It was about being healthy, and it requires us to really pay attention to it to get healthy and get into a healthy rhythm. Is one of the things that he said. And then Mike Grover added that he's added a monthly wet cement meeting type of setup where he's asking a certain number of people to join in the process of developing the direction and clarifying the direction. I thought both of those were very, very helpful for our group.
Very good. I love that. Wet cement. Can you tell us a little bit more about what he meant by a wet cement session?
Well, he was taking a small group of people and having them be a part of the conversation process of the direction to help with the clarification portion of it. And so he had a different group of people in each of these meetings. I don't know how many of them he's had, but he had different groups of people in each of these meetings from his church family, where he was able to pour into them and get some feedback from them as well. And so
many of you know my friend, Andrew Palencia. He is the co-host of the Idea Talks, the podcast that the network has. And Andrew also serves as a deacon on our church staff and one of the trustees, an amazing man. He one time said to me, Josh, he said, the biggest problems that you have created at Southern Hills are when you do not properly communicate to those who are really helping you lead the church. And then he explained to me, view, voice, and vote. I know many of you have read this and heard this kind of thing for years. I learned it last year. View, voice, and vote. He said, many people need a view of what's going on. And sometimes you can gather small groups of people to give them a view of everything you're planning, every direction you're going, even ideas that you're thinking. View. Some of those people need to have a voice, and you need to tell them, you have a voice here. I want to hear from you. And some people are going to have a vote. That's where your trustees and certain things, depending on how your church is set up, your ecclesiology is set up. view, voice, and vote. He said, what's most important about communication is telling the people that you're speaking to which of those three they have. I'm giving you full view of everything that's going on, or I want you to have a voice and speak into this, or I want you to vote on this. And that was extremely helpful. It sounds like some of those wet cement sessions run in the same direction. Nick, what did you see in your group that was really helpful?
Well, especially with the first question, we had a lot of change because of COVID. Some of it, they said COVID really enabled what was already in discussion. So probably some of that, is this the right timing? COVID helped make it the right timing. And so a lot of good discussion. In fact, today, I think was really the kind of a heartbeat behind the idea network and these roundtables, because there was a lot of ability to be able to have questions asked about other people's experience and some of those changes. And that was, I think Jason said it, just really seeking clarity. I don't think there was as much fear expressed about making that next decision that needs to be made. It's more wanting to make sure of the timing, that myth that we may hold on to, but sometimes it's also just making sure we have the right plan and the right strategy. As one guy shared, they know the direction that they're going, and so they know what they need to kill. It's just making sure that they have everything in place to make it possible. They want to kill a midweek children's program to best enable their groups, something that is the heartbeat of their church. But also, part of that is just making sure that all of that right strategy is in place. So really good discussion today, a lot of good feedback, and also a lot of additional conversation around what does that look like? Have you experienced this? And so it was a good discussion today.
I love what was shared about the idea that you're not there just to kill something just because you're a murderous individual, but because if we get rid of this, we can now focus on this. That is such a huge element to all of this. And I'm really glad, Nick, that you brought that out to us. Dennis, what was brought up in your group that was a helpful thought?
Yeah, I think kind of agreeing with Nick on everything that he said, a lot of changes that people made through COVID, but maybe not necessarily driven by COVID, but just enabled during that time. But probably one of the biggest takeaways that I had from our group is from Robbie Green, mentioning that the bigger the decision or the bigger the change that you're about to make, the more prep time you need going into it. That way you can prepare people. And then he mentioned leaning into your critics and giving them a voice, kind of what you just mentioned, Josh, and embracing the support that you have. But then also, I really appreciated the thought that was brought to the table of understanding that if you can keep people aware of what the direction is as you're making changes, and let them see that these changes are helping our direction of reaching people and discipling those that are being reached, I think that people embrace change in a greater way. So good discussion today. And Josh, you were in there, so I think it went well.
Yeah, it was a fantastic discussion in our group as well. So you might be asking yourself, okay, where are we going over the next couple of weeks? Well, we are very excited about the next couple of weeks. Before we do, I just want to mention, thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing what you did. Be in prayer for Dennis's father. And since we have an extra minute, Dennis, would you jump back on and can we highlight Dennis one more time? Can you give us an update on where Dad is?
Yeah, thank you. He's, of course, hasn't been doing too hot. He had 3 or 4 strokes over the last couple of months. He's lost all of his right side use, about pretty much all of his speech now. And we had him in a hospital for a while, a rehab center. They neglected him, so we ended up pulling him after 12 days there. So right now he's at my sister's with my mom, but he's not doing good. We're actually, we've already called hospice to come in right now to really just to give us direction, because they have access to a lot of things. Usually when you call hospice, it's kind of end of life, and we don't know if that's what we're looking at, but that's kind of where we're at in the process. So yeah, if you could pray for him, pray for wisdom for us. We really don't know where to turn on all of this. So I'd be a huge blessing.
Hey, Richard Moses, I'm going to ask you to come in and just pray over Dennis and his father. For those who don't know, Dennis's father is a incredible minister. And with all of these strokes and everything that's happening, it's very sad, not only for the family, but you have to understand his father is a leader within our network in an age a few years ago where we could not get anyone over the age of 50 to come to any of our events. Dennis's father and my father were two individuals who said, man, let's go. This will be fun. And just with a positive spirit and a loving attitude, really embraced the network. We're really thankful for that. Richard, before we close out, we're going to have Richard pray, and then I'll give some announcements as we close.
Jesus, we love you. We thank you for being the healer. We thank you for being the one who is in control of all things. I pray, Lord, that you would just bring great peace to Dennis and Hannah and their kids and his sister and their family during this time that I know is extremely difficult to see a man that you admire, a man that you love, going through what he's going through. And so, Lord, I pray specifically for their family to have peace and fortitude, and that you would just be the comforter during this time that you promised to be. Lord, I also pray for his father, Dennis. Lord, I pray that you would bring calmness to him. Lord, I pray that you would bring comfort to him and his wife. I pray that you would bring some sort of healing into his life. And Lord, as they make big decisions that I can't even imagine what they're having to go through, but as they make these big decisions, that you give them wisdom, and that you would give them wisdom to be able to do it the right way and at the right time. And Lord, I just pray that we would always know and we'd remember that you're in control no matter what, and that we would use that as something that gives us comfort every day. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Continue to pray, of course, for Dennis's father, and continue to also pray for Logan. We all love Logan. We all love Tony. Tony and Dave have been part of the network for quite some time. And we just need to continue to pray for a miracle. God is already doing some great things as it relates to the healing of Logan, but we need to continue to that prayer. All right, as we close out, the next few weeks are going to be extremely exciting, and we want to encourage you to not only be here right on time at 11 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but over the next few weeks, we have, next week, we have Tom Rainer with us, the necessity of innovation in the church. And so he's going to talk once again about the importance of being innovative in your local ministry and how to express that innovation to those you lead. That's going to be next week. He is going to do a live Q&A with us, so you'll be able to interact directly with Tom Rainer. The plan next week is not to break out into smaller groups. The plan is to allow that entire hour to be Q&A directly with Tom, and I think it's going to be a great time together. The week after that, Alan Parr. How many of you are familiar with Alan Parr? He is a YouTube sensation, nearly 1 million subscribers, and he deals with biblical topics. Fantastic. I started following him a couple months ago, and somebody told me about him, and everybody that follows him loves him. Deeply biblical, very good stuff. He's going to be joining us and talk about how to teach your small groups to go deeper in Bible study. And we want to encourage that. And it's going to be a great conversation with Alan Parr. If you don't familiar with him, go ahead and familiarize yourself with him and his content on YouTube. And I think you'll look forward to that interaction as well. Then lastly, there's a guy named Josh Tice who's going to do one called How to Set and Achieve Ministry Goals. In preparation for 2022, at the end of September, you're only going to be 3 months away from a brand new year. We're going to talk about how to properly set and achieve ministry goals for yourself, as well as helping your staff, team, and even deacons set ministry goals for themselves in the year to come. And I think you're going to enjoy that conversation in the month of September. We will highlight what's coming up in the month of October. Actually, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in the month of October as we have a focus on revitalization, and that's going to be coming very soon. So I'll tell you more about that next week. But in the meantime, we are right at the end of our hour, so we want to get you out here on time. God bless, guys. See you next week.